If you were worried about things calming down post the riots, guys, I've got great news. No brakes are left on this train. As soon as the fires went out, we only saw progressives get more and more insane as things spiral out of control in America. We have mainstream politicians pushing for movements like dismantling the police. We have streaming services and content providers like HBO pulling down classic movies like Gone in the Wind and any kind of content that could possibly offend the sensibilities of Black Lives Matter or whatever progressive group is going on a jihad that day. Mayors and police chiefs of major cities are going through public struggle sessions where they kneel before protesters or lay on their face, declaring their deepest apologies and begging for forgiveness. And there are now sections of American cities that are being declared autonomous zones where people can basically live lawlessly in some kind of attempt at a collective communist commune. The mainstream liberals are being replaced with the radical progressives that they allowed to grow inside colleges and seep out into the culture. They ignored all warnings and now are being devoured, as was always inevitable. This was always where it was going, there was plenty of warning, and they simply ignored it, but still, somehow, they stared amazement. Nothing is a better example of this, I think, than what's happening at the New York Times. There was basically a coup at the New York Times after it ran an editorial by Senator Tom Cotton, in which Tom Cotton expressed the radical opinion that, by the way, the majority of Americans agreed with, that the government should be using the National Guard in order to reinforce order during the riots. In any sane time, the major newspaper in the United States being asked to run an opinion piece by a sitting senator expressing an opinion that the vast majority of Americans agreed with would not be controversial. But of course, those are not the times we live in. And right after the editorial appeared, the staff of New York Times led a revolt basically against their leadership, declaring that running this opinion piece was akin to supporting fascism. And with this final overthrow, with this final coup, displacing the old liberal order at the New York Times, which is the bastion of liberalism, which is the holy church of liberalism, this is the place where the ideas filter through. Once the old guard was displaced, we knew for sure what had happened. The final ascent of the radical progressives was complete. The radical progressives are now in charge. There is no longer a set of people who they have to answer to who still pretend that they care about things like freedom of speech or objectivity when it comes to journalism. There is no longer a reason to pretend like you have any deference to rights. There's no longer a reason to pretend like you have any deference to tradition. There's no longer any reason to pretend that there are rules that govern your behavior. The progressives are in charge. They know it. They are culturally ascended, and there is no longer anything holding them back from pushing every agenda at full speed with no apology. And as these progressives made their final ascent, there seemed to be no one more surprised than the very people who enabled it, the centrists and the liberals who encouraged these people, who pushed their movements, who built their ideologies, who allowed them to fester and grow, who allowed them to dominate college campuses, educational institutions, media institutions. All of a sudden, they couldn't believe that this campus culture that they had been pretending would just be locked away in Ivy League schools. That was just something that 18-year-olds who got away from their parents were doing to act cool until they left and entered the real world and had to have reasonable opinions. This movement that they pretended was never going to come to dominate culture did so, and did so in the blink of an eye. At least they think it happened in the blink of an eye. Those of us who have been watching, those of us who have been warning, those of us who have been explaining that this was always where liberalism was going to go, we're not surprised. But for those who did not heed these warnings, this has come as an amazing shock. But if you think liberals have been worthless during this disaster, don't worry, conservatives have been worse. Somehow, conservative Inc. pundits and mainstream Republican politicians have found the ability to still focus on ridiculous things. We still get quips like, well, this just shows you that you need a smaller government, or thinking that the appropriate reaction to having historical figures and their statues destroyed is to stand around trying to explain how Columbus wasn't really racist, as if that's changing any minds. With the notable exception of Tucker Carlson, the entire conservative commentariat has been a complete disaster, completely unable to articulate what's going on, how it should be fought back against, what ideas are failing, what we need to do. Nobody seems to be able to tell the truth. Nobody seems to be able to understand what's going on. No one seems to understand what's necessary. And of course, the Republican Party is just an absolute disaster. The politicians who were supposed to stand up against this stuff, the people who were supposed to protect you, the people who were supposed to fight back when these mobs came, they've done absolutely nothing, and they have no intention of changing that. They're all busy trying to figure out how they can be eaten last, and they will not lend anyone a hand. They'd rather watch civilization burn than lose their seats. Mainstream conservatism has proven itself to be an absolute disgrace, deserves its position on the trash heap of history, and we certainly need something better moving forward to represent the right wing. Part of me knows this collapse had to come. The rational side of me knows that this had to occur in order for people to feel the pain. People were simply never going to abandon this ridiculous push, this progressive insanity, unless they felt the pain firsthand. I knew this had to happen, but it's just so ugly. It's so difficult. It's so hard to watch so many people fail morally. It's just disgusting. And the people I feel worst for are the normal people, the average people, the good people, the people who are listening to Glenn Beck or Rush Limbaugh and hoping that they can explain what's going on, the people who know that something terrible is happening, the people who know that they're being lied to, but they simply cannot find an answer. And so they're going to go out and they're going to express that pain and that anger and that loss, and they won't even know how or why. They'll be making a good faith effort to stand for their country and fight for what they believe in, and they'll be eviscerated for the mob. They'll be pushed out of their friend circles. They'll be fired from their job. They'll become unemployable. They'll become pariahs just because they're trying to do what's right and protect their families and protect their country. Those are the people I feel bad for. The people I feel bad for are these normal, average, middle America people who are going to have to suffer. But these things have consequences, and we didn't fight the battles we needed to. And now we have to feel the pain. I hate to watch good people go through this, but I know it's going to happen, and I know there's no way to stop it at this point. All we can do is prepare for what's next, and that really is the question. What does come next? Will the acceleration of the progressive agenda end in their total control? Will the collapse of any governing institutions mean that they will reign over everyone? They'll be able to push these ideas on everyone. They'll be able to silence and control everyone, and things are going to get a whole lot worse. I mean, that is certainly going to happen for a time. We are certainly going to see things push that direction for a time no matter what. But the real question will be, is the backlash going to come? Will people push back? Will the system collapse under its own weight? And will something new arise from it? That's certainly what we're all hoping for. That's what we're all building for. That's going to be the light at the end of the tunnel for us. But like I said in my last video, the time to become worthy is growing short. No need to be an accelerationist. The acceleration is happening right before our eyes. Please don't forget to hit like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and share this out if you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys next time.